All right. Well, Shane, hey, we got a new friend joining us today. Not a new friend, a new person here on the podcast.
Yeah.
A friend of ours joining.
Do we really call him friend?
Yeah, I was thinking, is friend a strong? Is that a?
Yeah,
it's a strong word.
No, I'm excited to have Jeremy here.
Yeah.
He's a wonderful guy.
Yeah. So, guys listening or watching, this is our friend Jeremy Edelin. Shane, I'll let you talk through his titles here at North Point. But he's a good friend of mine. And after we introduce, a little bit about you, we want to hear from you about your family and who you are, what you care about, and
I think your title is content director, right?
Yes, sir.
Which, like my title, doesn't really say a whole lot. You just don't know what that means. But I think you do everything when it comes to content and when it comes to creating some of the experiences where people digest content, whether it's digital experiences like podcasts. We've got Overtime podcast, everything that takes place Sunday morning in the auditorium, and a whole bunch of other little projects that you're working on here and there. What did I miss?
That's about it.
Yeah.
When people ask what I do, I'm like, well, Sunday. That church thing that happens, typically that's my role is Sunday. So, yeah.
And then one thing, just being on the other side of Jeremy, I get the wonderful privilege of sharing an office with Jeremy.
Against your will, too. Like, I just moved in one day.
Yeah. No, but
it's kind of like a stepbrothers moment for you.
Kind of.
For y'all.
We do have our moments. I think it's hilarious because sometimes people will be on the other side of our relationship, watching how we interact with one another. And then later on in the day, someone will either come up to Jeremy or come up to me and say, "Are you okay?" Jeremy said some pretty mean things, or vice versa. And it's just the kind of relationship we have. But if I was to honestly describe Jeremy, especially when it comes to like things like fatherhood and being a husband, like he's intentional.
Yeah.
And there are very few men that I know of who are proactively at his level pursuing what it looks like to be an intentional father, an intentional husband. He surrounds himself with people that are much wiser than me, and he's just he's trying to figure it out, and he's working hard at it, and it's inspiring and motivating for me as a father and a husband. I hope to be like him one day when I grow up.
I'd agree with that. Yeah. And I think we should just keep talking about him and not let him talk at all. We'll just keep talking for him.
What's your favorite Jeremy story?
That's our dad moment. It's our Jeremy moment for the week.
Yeah. I did share a picture of a story that we all experienced with a buddy last night from high school that I saw at a wedding rehearsal. And it was the picture of me with my backpack at Big Bend with my giant bag. And he thought it was hysterical.
Yeah, when you look like a turtle.
Yeah, he literally said it. You look like a Ninja Turtle.
Yeah. Little guy, giant backpack. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, that trip that had so many memories.
So many memories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, Jeremy, tell us about your family. And
I was really been here in Austin area for the bulk of my life. Moved here when I was 5. But my heart is in Colorado, the mountains. I love everything to do with Colorado and the mountains. And
you're wearing flannel today.
I'm wearing flannel today. I think my hat has a Colorado symbol on it. So similar to Norcross and his maple leaves, Yeah. And then I've been on staff at North Point now for coming up on 8 years full time, so maybe 10 years total, with part-time and full-time, so long time, and married to my wife Ashley, who I met at North Point when we were 15. It was my first real experience at church was North Point, and met her that first day I walked in, and there she was, and now we have 2 kids, and been married for 8 years, and we have Grayson, who is 2, and we have Shepherd, call him Shep, or Sheppy for short, and he's 4 months old, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sheppy, I like that.
Yeah, Grayson came up with that. Like, that was, he walks into his room and goes, "Morning, Sheppy," like every day. Nice. And so we're like, all right, Sheppy it is.
I love it.
When he's like a, big man one day, Sheppy probably won't be the thing he prefers, but for now.
But it will stick.
Yeah,
it'll stick. At home.
Yeah, at home it'll stick for sure.
Yeah.
And Grayson is at such a wonderful age where you get to just continuously watch that boy discover life.
Oh, yeah. I got a video from Ashley yesterday while I was at work, and it's him in his diaper running around with a Hulk cape and mask on, going Hulk smash and just punching different things in the house.
That's amazing.
And it's like, that's his life right now. It's great.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So we usually start sharing a dad story or a dad moment from the last month or a couple months, and maybe it's completely random and just funny, or maybe it's related to what we're going to talk about. But So I don't know who wants to go first, Shane or Jeremy, but somebody share a story.
Why don't we let our guests go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I knew about this, so I was like, "Oh, I've got one."
Yeah.
So Grayson is 2, just turned 2 in October, and we're filming this in December, and he got a playscape from his grandma for his birthday. And it was an awesome playscape, super cool, and we set it up. Kyle came over and helped us set it up. I had a neighbor set it up for a little bit. It took like 2 full days to do it. So I was so excited for him to get it. And then one of the things I've wrestled with as a dad is just how do I let him explore and be adventurous and not just always hold his hand, you know, and let him fall and let him fail, and trying to figure out what that looks like as a 2-year-old, but also being a responsible parent. And so 6 days into having this playscape, it's got a little rock wall on it, and I'm sitting on the patio drinking coffee one morning, and Saturday morning, letting Ashley sleep in, Sheppy's sleeping in, and Grayson's climbing the rock wall, and I see him at the top, which is not super tall. It's maybe like 5 feet tall. And I see him at the top, and I see his foot slip, and he slides down, and he kind of hits the bottom and rolls, and then he cries for a little bit, and he's fine. And I'm like, okay, well, I think he's good. I mean, he slid. He didn't even fall. He just slid down it. And then the next day, the rest of that day, he started to limp a little bit. And then we're like, okay, that's interesting. Something's a little sore, perhaps, from that happening. And then on Halloween, that Tuesday, he's like limping around our neighborhood, sprinting from house to house, and seems to be fine, but we don't know, okay, at this point, we should probably figure this out. So it took us about 6 days of our son limping around to finally go, I think something's wrong, we should take him in. And we took him in, and he broke his leg.
Nice.
So when the doctor asked, hey, when did he do this?
I just go, Saturday. And that was it. It was called a green stick fracture, which you're probably familiar with these because your kids have broken like all their bones.
Yeah, they've done all the things.
Yeah, and so it's the most minor fracture possible, but it's enough to like hurt and limp around for a while. So he had to put a boot on and stuff. Yeah. But I think it was just ironic. Like 6 days into the playscape, he breaks his leg, and then he went with a broken leg for 6 days before we actually did anything about it as parents. So pretty proud moment there. I had to talk to Ashley and be like, we're not terrible. It's mainly my fault because I let him fall. So
that should be our baseline. We're not terrible.
Yeah, that is.
We our girls, like, they getting in and out of the bathtub, they're always like trying to jump in and out, and they've got a cousin who broke a leg jumping out of the bathtub once, and so we always talk about like, you'll break a leg, and then now Maggie's like, you have to wear a boot like Grayson.
That was awesome.
Yeah, she's like, you have to wear a boot, so it's a memorable experience. I think she's kind of jealous of the boot.
Really? We can just send it over if she wants to wear it.
That's all right.
Yeah, the boot also.
You may need it again.
Yeah, the boot became a funny thing because like around Halloween and at his age at 2, like sugar and candy, we're trying to figure all that out. So we bribed him, of course, to put the boot on every day with a piece of candy. So he wakes up and he's like in his crib, boot, candy, boot, and he's like, I'll put it on, give me the candy. He's just so excited. So
he's addicted.
Yeah, his breakfast for 2 weeks was candy, so he'd put on his boot every day.
We have in our attic a whole shelf that's just different sizes of boots, walking boots. And so when we go to the doctor, it's like, okay, this child just may have broken something. Let's bring these 3 sizes because one of these might
You
work.
bring your boots into the doctor versus them giving it to you.
Yes.
Will one of these work?
Yeah.
A whole shelf.
That is amazing.
Of different sizes.
You spray them down with the same stuff from like the bowling alley.
That's 100%. Yeah. Yep. That's my family.
That's phenomenal. So when next time, instead of us buying a boot,
we've lent out boots all the time.
Oh my gosh!
There's your side hustle, Norcross. Just rent out boots.
Boot rental.
Yeah, we've got a variety of sizes of crutches.
That's awesome.
You got all the stuff you need.
That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's my story.
That's awesome. We Maggie, our 4-year-old, she's in school. One of her classmates had a birthday recently, and this particular classmate, instead of like, usually they bring cupcakes and share, but this classmate, like, I think they did cupcakes or donuts. She gave everybody in the class presents. So Maggie comes home with a present because it was Zaya's birthday, and we're like, wow, Zaya, you're awesome, but also kind of setting the bar a little too high here for us. And so she's got these, it's like dollar store little stuff, but one of them is a little squishy poop emoji ball that we've been throwing around the house. And Lucy specifically loves it. She likes running around, and I pretend like, don't poop on me, and she throws the poop, and it's fun.
It really is true what you said earlier, Norcross. Their family does.
We talk about poop all the time.
Yeah.
No, it's getting good. So this all happened like Monday, Tuesday. So Tuesday morning, I'm getting ready. I don't know if you heard this story. I know Shane has, but Tuesday, we're getting ready to go to I have jury duty, but so I'm trying to get out the door. I cannot be late because I'm scared of the judge, and it's like 30 minutes away, So I'm like, I don't know, traffic, and so I'm running. Jess has something for work. She's trying to drop kids off. It's a little chaotic, and I'm like, sorry, gotta go. You're on your own, and I'm jet. Well, 10 minutes later, she calls me, and I'm like, great, like. She's upset at me, like I probably offended her, or I don't know, like I'm gonna have to turn around and help. Something bad happened. She calls, she's like in a frantic, like there's poop all over the kitchen, like there's poop everywhere. It's like somebody stepped in poop, and it's everywhere. And she's kind of saying it like accusing me, and I'm like, I've not been tromping around the backyard. I don't know. I didn't bring poop in the house. I'm like checking. She's like, well, check your boots. You don't need to be bringing poop into the courthouse or whatever. And I'm like, I have Play-Doh on the bottom of the boot, but no poop. Nice. And so anyways, this whole thing where she's scrambling to clean up poop out of the kitchen, and I get home and I'm talking to Maggie about it. And this is not we've never had it like this before. Every once in a while, Frank will have an accident or something, but I get home and I'm talking to Maggie, and she's just telling me the whole poop story. Like she's thinks it's the coolest thing ever. And she's like, well, mommy didn't poop and I didn't poop, so it must have been daddy or Lucy or Frankie, and so she's like trying to solve the mystery crime. And then she's like, well, I think we should go talk to the neighbors. Who pooped in my house? Like,
I just love how dad's top of the list. It's dad before dog as potential suspects.
So I thought it was all fun. Like we're literally playing a game where like, don't poop on me, and then there actually is poop in the house, and nobody knows where it came from. And so I have a suspect in mind, but it's fine.
So the Play-Doh on your shoe, is it brown and smelly?
No, it was red.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just checking.
Yeah. So that was fun. It's fresh.
Yeah. So when we come to your house, that's the first question your daughter's going to ask us is, where were you the night of?
Yeah. Approximately 7:30 a.m. on Tuesday, December 5th.
Yeah. Well, since it's Christmas season, or the Christmas season's coming up.
Yeah.
I thought I'd share a dad moment from last year's Christmas Eve, actually. So my family on Christmas Eve, we all go over to my mother-in-law's place because she comes up with some crazy game ideas. And they're always filled with laughter, and they're super creative, and they're chaotic. She gets these ideas from a show called Taskmaster, if you've ever heard of it. Check it out on YouTube if you're looking for creative game ideas. And so the games are usually really simple with some weird spin. And so in this game, each one of us would have to go one at a time into another room, and we didn't know what was happening until you got in the room. And what we had to do is we had to take a spoon, walk across the room, and bang a drum. And you're like, that's ridiculous. Like, how is this a game? And she's like, here's the two things that are most important. You will get bonus points for artistic impression, and you will get bonus points for getting as close to hitting the drum in 9.7 seconds. And so they timed, when they said go, your job was to cross the room and hit the drum with as much artistic impression in 9.7 seconds, okay? So it's just the total ridiculous weird game.
Yeah.
So we would all go in one at a time, and then once we were done, we would sit and watch others come in and do it. So the crowd got bigger. So I think the very last person was my son Jonah, who was probably he was 20 at the time. So he had disappeared into his grandmother's bedroom. He comes out, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say this as a father, he comes out wearing one of her dresses. This is his artistic impression. So as a father, I'm a little concerned. He takes this wooden spoon that you're supposed to use to hit this drum, he sticks it in his mouth, and he starts dancing across the room when they say go. So he's dancing across the room in his grandmother's dress, me as a father, a little concerned, hits the drum with the spoon in his mouth, and what happens? His tooth comes flying out of his mouth. Like we all see it. We're all like, he didn't break his tooth, the entire tooth, his canine, and I get it on camera. Like it just comes flying out of his mouth as he hits the drum. And it is, at this time, it's like 9:30 p.m. Christmas Eve. And my son just lost his tooth. And so me and my wife...
And that's not like a little kid lost a tooth. Like
I was going to say, was he expecting the tooth fairy to come too?
And the best thing is we had invited friends over that hardly knew us. And they're like, first off, why is your son in a dress? Yeah. And what is wrong with this family? And so I'm like Googling, what
should I do with this?
What should I do? My wife was a nanny for an oral surgeon way back in a previous life. So she, Christmas Eve, is trying to track down this guy that she babysat for. And she got a hold of his wife. She said he's out on a hunting lease Christmas Eve, and so she got a hold of him. He calls her back and says, "Hey, try to call your dentist, should have an on-call number, and then rinse the tooth with cold water, and stick it back in his mouth in the hole." And we're like, "Just stick it back in?" He's like, "Yeah, the mouth should like just accept the tooth."
Re-grab it?
Yeah, kind of. We're like, "Seriously?" He's like, "Yeah. Then it's better if you get it in as fast as you can." So Jonah's in the bathroom rinsing it off, sticks it back in. We get a hold of the dentist, Jonah's dentist. And this incredible dentist, at this time, it's like getting really late at night. He's like, "Hey, I will meet you at the dentist's office. Just come to the back door, and I'll be there in 30 minutes.
A little sketchy, but that's nice.
What was sketchy was what happens when we're at the dentist. Oh, no. So he lets us in, and he pulls out, like, pretty much glue and fishing line. And we're like, "What's that for?" And he proceeds to tell us, he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna build a splint for your son's tooth. And because the mouth will accept it, we just got to keep it in place. And this will hold for the next couple of days until it's not Christmas." He's like, "Schedule an appointment. We'll come back December, I can't remember if it's 26th or 27th, and we'll just check on everything to make sure that his mouth is kind of re-accepting the tooth, and it should be fine. All he'll need is a root canal." And so he got a root canal, and the tooth is fine. But it was just like, one of those parent moments, again, where it's like, what do you do? 10 p.m. Christmas Eve, trying to call our dentist.
Wow.
Man.
Yeah.
Kudos to you for, like, making the phone calls. I think I would have been like, "Well, you..."
Sucks to be you.
Better start saving for a new tooth.
That's why Kyle's on this fatherhood
You're an adult
podcast.
now.
Kyle with all his great wisdom.
Well, just remember the key points. Elena called.
Well, it's true.
I was Googling. Elena was making phone calls.
What do you do? Yeah.
Says the guy who took 6 days to take his son to
Yeah. I know. This is where people are probably like, "Man, Shane and Jeremy, that Jeremy was a jerk." Yeah. But this is just how we treat each other.
Yeah. I mean, to this day, his tooth is fine.
Wow, that's crazy.
It didn't turn colors.
No.
Turn
gray if you open or whatever. His mouth and smile, it's not.
Can't even tell.
Nope. Can't even tell.
Wow.
Totally fine.
I think we should try this again. Like, who wants to... Let's pull a tooth and test the theory.
Terrible idea.
No?
Yeah. Stories.
Wow.
I'm going to keep thinking on that all day probably. But, well, what are we here to talk about today? You have your notes up.
Are you actually asking me this question?
Asking.
Oh my gosh. I think we talked about, like, what does it look like for us to create environments at home where our kids will flourish?
Yeah, that's right.
Our families will flourish, or we as adults and fathers will flourish.
People, yeah.
Is that ringing a bell yet, Kyle?
It is.
We just lost half our listeners.
No, I'm just kidding. So let's start with that. Like, what do we need? What do our children need in order to flourish? I think that's a really wide open question.
You turn to look at me. The guy with 6 kids that are fully grown, and
well, I have. Sure, I could talk about this. I made a list of all these things, and the very first thing that came up in my mind was I reflected back on we had 4 boys, like back to back to back to back. So they were, and my wife and I we were thinking about, like, what do we want to do as a family early on, and the thing that we decided was, like, we want to eliminate as much distraction and busyness as possible and just spend time together in our home, playing, having fun, being present. And so the first thing that came to mind was just what our kids need is they need our time. And I think when it comes to little kids, especially, and this is a world that you guys are in, is I think when I look at the experiences that we had with our little children, and I look at how they responded, I think time leads to security in their minds. And if you can create experiences or an environment where your kids feel secure and safe, that will lead to flourishing.
Yep.
Like, is this a safe place? Am I secure in our home? And I think above all else, to start with that, it means us as fathers have to spend time with them.
Yeah.
So that one might be obvious, but that was the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah.
And I think we live in a world today where I like statistics, kind of pulling up data when it comes to fatherhood. And I think what I read was today 1 in 4 kids are going to grow up in a fatherless home. Which is, how do you respond to that? And then
when you get into, I don't have the statistics off the top of my head. I'm going through a book right now called The Intentional Father, which is really, really interesting. That's a podcast in and of itself probably. But it just talks about correlating fatherlessness with like so many things in society, drug use, people in prison, just so many things that you would go like, I'd never correlate those two things, but there's a weird amount of data to go, those are related. Like that's the dad plays such a key role in the development of not just keeping kids from going to those things, but like allowing the security to come into a child so they don't go to those things, right?
I wrote a few of them down if you want to.
Yeah, well, I think one of them is like 1 in 5 men, or 1 in 5 men in prison have had a father in the household. Well,
this is this article that I read just a couple weeks ago said 71% of all high school dropouts come from homes with absent fathers. 85% of all youth in prison come from fatherless homes. 90% of all homeless and runaway children come from fatherless environments, and 70% of teen suicides occur in homes where there wasn't a dad.
See, isn't that crazy? Like, those numbers are just nuts.
Yeah, it is like the one variable.
Yeah.
I think related to that, I mean, we're talking, this is a podcast for dads, but I think there's a lot of data that also shows that a lot of these children just suffer from just like no parents at all too.
Right,
just parentless as well. When you talk about like the foster care community and the system, so to speak. And so, but the role specifically of father here is huge.
Yeah, these stats were specifically saying fatherlessness.
That's new to me. Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yep. One of the things that this Intentional Father book talks about, I guess I'll just share it because I'm reading it right now.
Yeah.
It just gives 5 different types of fathers. I don't remember all of them. I should have brought it with me. But there's like absent, there's distant, there's available, and then there was, which it just kind of goes through the spectrum of the father that's totally not there, the one that's like kind of there but he travels a lot, the one that's there but is emotionally unavailable, the one that's there and present and emotionally available mostly is like the 4th one. And that's where I think a lot of dads with great intentions fall. And then there's the intentional father is like the goal, and that's the father that's like available, is emotionally available, and like pursuing the heart of their children, which I think that's something for me as a dad that I'm trying to, like, what does it look like to pursue the hearts of my kids,
What does that look like?
Oh, I don't know. I'm asking you, Shane.
Well, when you're saying those things, those are the two things, like, what does it mean as a dad to be available emotionally? Because that was one of the things, right? So what does that, like, what does that look like? How would you describe that?
Yeah. Golly, I feel like there's so many things that come to mind. I think number 1 for me is, how am I showing up emotionally every day? How am I being more aware of and available to myself emotionally? Went through just a series of experiences in my life that caused me to have to look inward and really try to understand what's going on in me. And there's this proverb that's one of my favorites. It says, a man's heart is like deep waters, one with insight draws them out. So, a person who's wise and insightful draws out what's going on inside of them in such a way that can channel what's happening, because another proverb says, guard your heart because everything you do flows from it. So if you're watching what's going on in your heart, you're really able to watch the direction of your life and where you're showing up and where you're not showing up. And so for me, I think the number 1 question that I began to answer was just, what am I feeling? Every day waking up and journaling, what am I feeling right now? And that was weird because for a while it was like, fine,
or tired.
Tired, yeah. Which that's it most of the time now, is like, not much is going on, I'm just tired. But when I began to name things like, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm excited for this, I'm feeling complacent today, or I'm feeling humiliated today, like I started to name those things, it began to just, awaken something in me that had never been in there, because nobody ever really asked me what are you feeling right now? And it began to explain a lot for me. And I think that's one of the things that as I think about showing up emotionally for Grayson and for Shep is like, how can I continue to practice those kind of things for me so that what's in me is not coming out on them? You know, because I think so often that's what happens is, you know, something that's not processed gets transmitted. And so if I haven't processed it and it's something that has to do with my life, it's going to come out on them. And so how can I show up each day to go, man, I'm frustrated here at this work thing or in this, even in, you know, mine and Ashley's relationship or something. How can I be aware of that in such a way that it doesn't come out on my kids? Yeah. And that's not to stuff it. That's to find other channels and places to bring those things, you know. I was just sharing with you guys, there's a documentary called The Work that I'm watching right now. It's about men in prison. And, oh, yeah, I lost our...
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I saw this flash in the corner of my eye.
Yeah, no, it's good. Showing us the latest Christmas movies here. Shows how, like, high-tech we figured out a solution for this is.
Luke, you should yell at us if you see that thing switch.
I wasn't on that camera.
Oh.
There you go.
Sorry, I didn't know if I should cut you off.
Anyways, I feel like, yeah. So The Work is this documentary. They're showing these guys in prison, and they're putting them in these situations where they have to feel, and they hold them down. They ask them, they talk about all their life stuff, and then they hold them down. So they can't physically express this emotion, and these men just start to like cry and scream and yell, and they're like, I've never, ever done that in my life. And it's just all that stuff in them that they've never processed that's coming out. And many of them are going like, I wish I would have, you know, could have saved me a lot in my life if I had like figured out what to do with all this.
So it's one thing to get to a place where you can just ask yourself the question, what am I feeling? But then what encourages you to like unpack those feelings? Because I think there's more to just identifying the feeling. Like that's not where it stops. You then have to do something with that feeling. I'm angry.
Right.
Then what does Jeremy do with that to help himself be emotionally available to his children?
Yeah. I think it's understanding that like some of these emotions that pop up that we can't control are like an iceberg. Like on the surface you see this, but below them is this giant thing, and it's trying to discern what is that giant thing that's there that's causing me to feel this way. And so, you know, I'm angry. Okay, why am I angry? And so I heard somebody say once, I think it was Andy Stanley, he said like anger is a result of just not getting what you want. And so I'm angry. I'm not getting what I want. What am I not getting that I want right now? And ultimately, it's just going down that path of why enough times. And for me, it's through journaling. That's like the only, or with people, or with hanging with you guys, you know, grabbing coffee and trying to process like, man, this thing's going on. I don't know what to do here. And eventually getting to the point where it's like, okay, well, that either is like helpful or not helpful. And how can I, you know, and for me in my faith, like submit that to God, or how can I, you know, kind of just let this run its course, get it out of my system, not let it produce something that's not helpful for my goals and priorities in my life, you know. So that's how I do it. But what would you guys say? Well, I totally steered the conversation somewhere different too. So
no. I think this is. I think you know, time and presence are really important with our kids. But we can do both those things and not be emotionally present or available. Yeah. And those first two then won't happen.
That's one of the things I was going to say, like atmosphere of the household, I think is set by a lot of this too.
Well, and the one thing you said, like submit them to God. So I was reading something recently on prayer, and it was just so simple, but yet it's so true. It said, bring what you got to your Heavenly Father. And what it meant was like, if you're angry, bring your anger to God. If you're disappointed, bring your disappointment. If you're frustrated, bring your frustration. If you're tired, bring your tiredness. And it's like, because our God is greater and bigger than all of these things. And he is the one that wants to receive them and help us process them. So even just like submitting them to God means just simply bring what you got to God. Yeah. See what he does with it.
This makes me think of, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but it's all related here. All right. So
this is going to be good.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking today, it is easier for me to think about, so I'm just going to put a pin, bookmark the emotional availability. Okay. But because I want to come back to it. But I was thinking before we started today, like it is easier for me to consider, how do I set a home up? How do I create an environment at home for my little kids to flourish? Because it's a lot. I mean, that's the season I'm in. I think I understand it. It is challenging and demanding energy-wise because we can't communicate and stuff. But in a lot of ways, it's pretty simple too. It's like you're hungry, you want to play. Like it's pretty simple. And we need to do lots of systems, lots of rules, lots of discipline, lots of structure. And when we do those things well, then usually we have better days, and kids, it's time and presence. I was thinking though, what does it look like for like older children to flourish? Like, what does flourishing look like for teenagers? That's a world that I haven't lived in yet, where they're making their own decisions. They're starting to question all the rules and the systems and hopefully you're living out of the fruit of all of the work that you did when they were younger. What does it look like for them to flourish in their home? That led me down a path of like thinking about my teenage years. And I had a dad who was present. He spent time with us. He was there. He cared, still does. But the emotional availability piece, you're giving me language to understand that, like, I think I'm carrying around, and I'm still processing and working through how to become emotionally available in my marriage, with friendships, with God, because I had had conversations with my dad, but there was I would say a definite lack of trust of like, we can talk about these things are on the table, school, sports, whatever, but I'm not talking about me. I'm not talking about how I feel. I'm not talking about like girls. I'm not going to talk about all these other things because I just don't know. Like it was like talking to a wall kind of like, and you guys know a little bit more of my story, but so the emotional availability I think is a really key thing. And from my experience, learning to do that earlier than later, I think will open a door for more opportunities to have a home, to allow for our children to flourish, especially the older that they get. Because otherwise, I think we put up walls or create barriers for our kids to connect with us emotionally, which then deteriorates relationship and trust and intimacy with our kids, and then you can't get that back. Yeah, it's so much harder. Like I was literally on a run this week. Like, how do I reinvest in the relationship with my dad when it's been 20 years of me feeling this way? Like, I don't know how to do that. And so that's the meandering of my mind today. But I think for older kids especially too, is that different? Like creating a home where, like, how do we show up differently as fathers? Yeah. Like, the energy seems to change from when they're young to the older that they get, or does it?
Well, I think when our kids are small, you guys might be experiencing this. What happens when you get home from work, you open the front door? What's the first thing that happens in your house?
Daddy!
Yes.
Yeah, it's
like your young kids are like super excited because their father is home.
Yep.
And they will come running from anywhere in the house, and I bet they will drop whatever they're doing because their hero is home. Guess what my teenagers don't ever do?
Wait, are you saying that stops?
They just ignore you.
I'm trying to picture what that would look like if my 4 older boys were there. Yeah, that would be amazing. They don't it's like sometimes they don't even lift their head from what they're doing. I can like walk right by, go to my room, drop stuff off, walk by them.
You've been home
times,
an hour.
Yes. And then they'll look up and
they're
say,
like, "Hey, Dad,
when did you get home?" But I think what happens when they're older is, yes, you have to be emotionally available, but you have to be emotionally available in their time. Because it's like, it'll be 11:30 at night, and my wife and I are like, we're like crashing in bed, and one of our teenagers will walk in, and he just is in the mood to talk. And this might be one of our teenagers that we've been trying to pull things from him for weeks, and it's like, what's wrong? Every time we ask him a question, he shuts down or just answers with fine or okay or leave me alone. But for some reason at 11:30 at night on a Tuesday, he wants to open up. And so what we have realized is you have to be just ready for them to walk in the room at any time. And you just don't know when that's going to be.
Do you think that's a product of the investment you made 5 years before then?
Well, I think
10 years before then.
I mean, whether they're asking the question or not, consciously or subconsciously, our children are saying, "Can I trust you?
Yeah.
Are you safe?
Yeah.
Do you want what's best for me?" And I think if you feel like you can answer those questions with yes, they're going to come to you.
Yeah.
But they don't, like, there's not like, this is the crazy thing, is it's on their time.
Yeah.
And you never know when that's going to be.
Yep.
I feel like that's going to be a big challenge for me when it comes to that season, because I love my rhythms and times and stuff, and so to be there. I've heard Buck talk about this too.
Yeah.
That like, man, I'm like, how you doing? He's like, I'm tired. You know, finally one of my boys talked to me, but it was midnight last night.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And so, and I think what's funny is like, I don't do this well, but you have to schedule moments that I give them my presence. For example, like I took Nathan out for breakfast tacos a couple weeks ago, and it felt like I was pulling teeth trying to get him to have a conversation with me. But what it communicated to him was I care, because what happened after that was there were moments throughout the next several weeks where he came to me more openly, even though at the time breakfast didn't seem like a success.
Yep.
So I think we have to show our kids that, hey, I am available to you, but sometimes our kids don't immediately respond.
Yep.
That's where too, I cannot speak to the season of life with teenagers, obviously, but I led a small group with a bunch of teenagers for a while, one of your boys, and one of the things I observed is I think I'd hear them say things like, when they talk through, it just feels like my dad doesn't care. And I think as I would hear them talk, it almost felt like there was this missing thing happening between father and son, where dad obviously wanted to participate, but when there's enough of those like pulling teeth kind of moments, dad's like, well, I guess this is it, you know, and then dad disengages. And then so it's almost like you have to really, what I'm pulling from this is I'm listening to you talk, Shane, is like, man, when I get to that season, I need to remember that I just need to keep showing up and just show up and selflessly do it. Like, it's not for my benefit, it's for him. And if and when he's open to talking, they're open to talking, like, then, you know, that's.
And one more thing I think is really important is pay attention to the questions we're asking our teenagers. We live in a performance-driven world. We are continuously driven by performance. Everything is evaluated by our performance. Are all of the questions that I'm asking my boys about their performance? Hey, how's school going? How are your grades? Hey, how's sports?
Yeah.
How's your team doing? And I think the message that our kids can receive from that is, you don't necessarily care about me.
Yeah. Versus, how are you doing?
Yeah. Or just like, am I pursuing discovering my child's heart?
Yeah.
And one thing I did is when I do this with Lander still to this day, to Lander, $1 billion is like all the money in the world. And so when I put him to bed at times, one of the things I say, is like, hey, if somebody offered me $1 billion to buy you, what do you think I would do? And Lander's like, his eyes get real big, because he's like, this is a lot of money. It's all the money in the entire world. I'm like, I would choose you. It's not enough. Like, there's no amount of money in the entire world that I would trade for you.
Wow.
Because, like, that's how valuable you are to me. And I try to do it in moments when he's either had a bad day, or maybe he feels like he's disappointed mom and dad. I haven't performed well. Like, those are the moments that I'm trying to build up his identity. Like, you have worth, and it is not tied to your performance. Even though it's just crazy how often we say, I'm so proud of you, but we could finish the sentence with, because you did this.
Right.
And can we find moments that we can say things like, I'm so proud of you, and it isn't performance driven. And I catch myself all the time.
Yeah.
That's good, man.
I've noticed myself catching myself too. We're working specifically with Maggie, like, can you work on listening better? Like, and really what we mean is like become more obedient.
Yeah.
But it's easier for that phrase to be turned into like, I'm a good listener or I'm a bad listener. And it's like, well, I don't want you to feel either one. Like, I want you to feel like you can listen well, or you can choose not to listen to, but you're making choices. Yeah. It doesn't determine you being good or bad right now. But I catch myself because I'm like, yeah, you're being a bad listener. Like, you don't care enough about me. And it's like, so not true. So I love I really appreciate the conversation today, really around like, and even your example from leading the teenage guys. Cause I think, that just reminds me so much of who God is for us, of like just this like going to love, going to show up, and hoping for something in return, but not expecting it.
Yeah,
like
it's purely selfless.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what a great lesson for us. And it just makes me think if we can learn to do that with our children, we'll be able to learn to do that with our spouses, in our marriage, with our friendships, in our work. This is like a domino piece.
Yeah.
But it is cool, and I think we see that with our kids. Like the kids is kind of the front lines in this.
Yeah.
Because I think I have higher expectations for Jess. She's an adult. Take care, like say what you need. Like there's just, it's a different level. But with these children, they can't communicate when my foot hurts or what I need, and so it's just so much more important for me to be present and to notice and to give, and to not take things. I'm 35 years old. I do not need the affirmation of a 2-year-old right now.
Yeah.
As good as it feels, I'm going to keep showing up.
Yep. That's really good.
Well, that's my take. You haven't asked what my takeaway is yet, but I feel like that's a takeaway for me.
We've
today.
only answered question 1, Kyle.
Yeah. Well,
we've got other questions that we need to go through.
Which one do you want to go through?
Well, what does it look like to flourish as a family with littles? We talked a little bit about that time of presence. And so, I was thinking back of when I had littles, but I'm curious. I want to give you the opportunity to like, hey, Kyle, if I was to ask you as a father of little children, what does it look like for you to create an environment in your home for you and your littles to flourish?
Yeah. I guess I think of it as we're in a season right now where we have to resist the temptation to be busy. You kind of mentioned this. Like we're going into Christmas right now. Our December is packed full of stuff. And it's very easy for us to think about, like, we have to get Santa pictures. We have to do we got to drag our kids around to all of these events. We have to make core memories, and we have to have the special, all the special stuff, and then the gift giving, and we're creating traditions, and it I've noticed this with Jess, like it wears on her. And none of this is bad, and she's having conversations with all of her friends, and everyone's doing things, but that compounds, I think, over time, and it puts a weight on our shoulders that, like, there are now all of a sudden all of these expectations we have going into this Christmas season that, like, we're going to screw our kids up if we don't do all of these things well. And so in moments of clarity, we sometimes get moments of clarity where it's like, none of that matters. Like, instead, yesterday, we were making, Jess got to go for a run, and when she comes back, she's all smiles because she walks into the kitchen and we're making smoothies. The 2 girls and me, we're making smoothies. We have one for Mom, and we have 20 minutes to share with each other around banana strawberry smoothies, and everybody's laughing and playing and throwing the poop emoji thing at each other. Like, it's fun.
I was like, throwing poop.
Yeah, throw that. Yeah.
Thank you for
chocolate banana smoothies.
Play-Doh.
So, but those are the memories that we remember. Those are the moments in our home for us, and for people that could be completely different. It may need to be other activities, but those are the moments for us. Like when we have slowed down enough and alleviated all the rejected or resisted a lot of the other things that said, like, we could have been running ourselves ragged that day and like tried to get out the door an hour earlier because we wanted to go do XYZ, but instead like resisted those things and just, we're just going to be together and let's make smoothies. Let's that's not a normal thing for us, but we were doing it today or that day. I think about a home where we flourish is also that's an example of that being in the morning. Oftentimes that looks like, it is just time with the 4 of us all together, and it doesn't matter what we're doing. It's the simple moments, and it's like when these aren't in the room, these aren't on.
Yeah.
And when one of the kids comes up and says, "Hey, watch me, Dad," or "Come with me, Dad."
Yeah.
The little one, she does
good.
that all the time.
So good.
Puts her hand up, "Come with me. Let me show you. Let me show you."
What you do next is the most important thing.
And if I have the capacity, let's go up. Got to go all the way upstairs, go to the room. Gonna walk past 5 things that I should have been working on or doing or cleaning or fixing.
Yeah.
And just ignoring all that stuff and let's build something with Legos or whatever it is. Like that to me is like we're creating a home where these kids are flourishing because I was able to say yes, take the hand and go follow wherever that led me to.
Yeah.
And I cherish those moments. And I regret when the hand gets offered and I'm too busy doing dishes, or I'm too busy trying to fix dinner, or I'm too stressed out because something on my phone is buzzing me, or I'm allowing my stuff to interrupt. So those are to me, for us right now, like that's what it looks like. A flourishing home for us.
And I think it's so easy for us to beat ourselves down as dads. Oh, I didn't, I missed that moment with my child. I'm terrible. Like, I would challenge guys, like, every moment is a brand new moment. You get to start over every single moment. And the voices that are telling you, hey, you didn't do a great job yesterday, you were not present, you were discontent, you were frustrated about things at work that you brought home, like, I'd say, hey, it starts over right now. And I think that shame and that frustration, that discouragement, and all the times that we've missed can really cause us to miss the next moment. And as you were talking about just littles in the home, I was thinking about our house a little bit more. And one of the signs that I think my wife and I have learned to appreciate is baseboards that are beat to heck. Like, they're just so
destroyed.
They're destroyed. Like, they do not look nice. There's so much destruction around all of our baseboards, and it's because of the things we've done together. We would have scooter races in the house. We would have like Nerf gun battles, and there's just like our walls are awful, and it's because of some of the things that we've done as a family inside those walls. And
I think it's cool to when I get to initiate, it's awesome to say, I'll take your hand, and like, I'm so curious now what you're going to show me or what you want to do. Like, that's a really cool experience. But when I've had some opportunities to like take one of them and just say, hey, when I've had opportunities like, hey, would you like to go do this puzzle with me? And for them like, yes, I would love to. Like, those small little moments of like me inviting them into a moment just together for 10 minutes. That's pretty cool too. That is. So destroying the house or whatever it is, Nerf gun, whatever.
And when they say, "Daddy, come with me," I can't remember who told me this, but it was the best advice. Whatever emotion your child is going to display next, do whatever you can to meet it. Meaning, like, sometimes, like, what is really exciting to our children is not really exciting to us. But if Lander is taking me into the backyard to show me a 2-inch caterpillar on the tree, and it is in that moment the greatest thing in the entire world, I need to try to match his excitement. Because it communicates, if this is important to you, it's important to me. And we can discover this together. And there's a lot of times where that in itself is incredibly important to create an environment where our kids will flourish. Is this important to my dad? Because it's important to me. So try to meet whatever emotion when your daughter says, hey, Daddy, come here, I want to show you something. Whatever's about to happen, happy, sad, excited, scared, like, meet that emotion.
Sure.
This is encouraging because our windows are like forever ruined by like handprints and Ashley does like fingers. Ashley does so many fun things with them, like shaving cream, and draw pictures in the shaving cream. There's stickers all over the glass, and we're just like we're leaving. That's not a goal in our life to like have a super clean house like that.
I honestly would challenge you, like, if you and Ashley see those marks on the wall, the scrapes on the baseboard, sometimes the greasy hands that are just like there's like gray streaks. It's like, stop and celebrate. Like, we're creating a home where our kids are flourishing, and the walls don't need to look great.
I was joking with our friends too. Our patio in our backyard, it's got like a sand pit, and it's got the thing, and it's got the little toddler trampoline. It looks like we have 7 children, and we have 1 kid just running all around doing all this stuff because Shep's not doing anything yet.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
But it's always just a complete wreck, and I'm like, I think this is the beautiful chaos we want to create, and it's funny, and like we paint we just like to change up our house enough for fun to keep doing stuff that whenever we're doing a project, we'll give Grayson some markers and crayons and be like, go at it, bud. Yeah. And he just like runs across the wall. And the last time we did a project, I got a video of Grayson that he had drawn on over a wall. And then Ashley, just for no reason, had written gonorrhea across the top before we painted over it. Where did that go from? That's my wife right there. She just thinks that's hysterical. So that's so yeah.
So it's on your wall.
So underneath paint on our wall is colors, markers, and gonorrhea.
So cute.
Don't know if that's kosher for the podcast or not, but
that's why we have Luke.
Yeah, he can edit that out if he's like, nope.
Well, how about this, Shane? What if because I think you've got some really practical. We've talked some practical tips, but like as we kind of wrap a little bit here, if we bounce some ideas for guys who may be listening, like, okay, all of this is great. What are some really practical tips? Do we have a couple of ideas that we could leave with men to, if they're struggling or this is intimidating for them, to go from, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't even know if my kids are, I don't know how to even answer the question, to like, let me just try something. Yeah. Do we have any ideas for those guys?
I think one of the things we haven't talked about yet that, as I saw the title of the podcast, the very first thing that hit my mind is that creating an environment for kids to flourish like starts with the marriage of mom and dad. And that can come off as very insensitive because I recognize there's dads who are perhaps listening that are in dynamics that are difficult, or they're a single dad, or, you know, they're divorced or doing, I don't know. And I don't want to minimize any of those things. And I don't want to create shame or guilt or hurt or any of that. But for me, as I've asked these kind of questions of how can I create safety and security for my kids, and I've read and looked up the brain development in little kids, all of it, just so much of it comes back to, even outside of Christian influence, just mom and dad relationship. And how can you the relationship communicates safety and security to a child. And so for Ash and I, we try to come back to that a lot. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we try to do is, like, this is maybe practical, and we definitely don't nail it every time. And especially right now, Grayson like comes up and beats us to it. But when I get home, I just try to go like kiss Ashley first and say hi to her first before I can say hi to the kids. Mm-hmm. And so just it's like, mom is my number one priority, and I want you to know that she's my number one priority, because you're not my number one priority, but this is going to be best for you and communicate the most safety and security for you. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that's cool is, as I've tried to do that and try to figure out what that looks like it's fun when you read studies and books and like, oh, this is true. And then you see it happen, because what ends up happening is I go and I kiss Ashley, and then I look over at Grayson, and he's sitting there with the biggest smile on his face. Yeah. And then he'll even say, kiss mama. Yeah. And he wants to see it again. And it's like, he loves to see us love each other. And I know one day he's going to be a teenager and be like, that's gross. And I'm still going to do it. Sure. Because even if they think it's gross, it's communicating like, this is a safe and secure place for you, because this relationship is intact. Yep. And you can belong here safely because of that.
And there are moments when your teenagers say it's gross, but there are moments when Elaine and I are showing affection to each other in front of them, and what is being displayed on their faces is everything is going to be okay in our home.
Yeah.
Same look that Grayson has.
Yep.
This is good. I am good. My parents are good.
Yep. And I just want to go back to, I understand not everybody's in that situation. Sure. And that's why I want to reference what you said, Shane, like every day's a new day. Mm-hmm. Like if it has been a struggle thus far, or communicating safety and security has been far more complex than what I'm saying right now, then every day's a new day. What does it look like to communicate that safety and security to your kids as a single dad, or in a relationship where your kids are bouncing between houses? Like, what does it still look like? And I don't have the tools for that, but I just know that there are men who have been in those situations. And like Shane said, every day is a new day.
Yep. Yeah. That reminds me, you had an example like that similarly. I don't know if you want to say it.
I don't remember.
The couch time.
Yeah, we do couch time. I mean, we call it couch time. The same thing. When I came home from work, and you can imagine, we had 4 young boys. You have Grayson yells daddy. I had like 4 daddies, and they come all running. And Elaine and I would tell our boys, hey, it's couch time. It's mom and daddy time. I'm going to give Elaine's going to give daddy 5 minutes of their time. You guys can do whatever you want, but you're not going to interrupt this time. This is important. And there were days they pushed him, but I think that helped create an environment that showed them our marriage is important. Mm-hmm. And I'm investing in your mom because she's important. And this is important to the health of our family. And the other thing, Kyle, that I was thinking of, and I know we're running out of time, but when it comes to, hey, what are some things that we want to that are practical, is I want to encourage dads to check or to be careful with the hopes and dreams that they have for their children. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I think the hopes and dreams that I have for my children might be the barrier that's preventing them from becoming who they are supposed to be. Yeah. And we have to be really careful. Like, I have ideas of what it looks like for my children to grow up to be successful. But what if that isn't the person that they were designed and wired to be? Yeah. And sometimes if we're pushing them in a certain direction too hard, we have to ask ourselves, is that direction for my sake, or is it really for their benefit? Yeah. And I see that all the time in my own parenting. I got to be careful what questions I'm asking them, or what is important to me. Yeah. Is it because I think this is what's best for them, or is it really what's best for them? Is it my hopes and dreams for them, or is it their hopes and dreams for them?
That's good. I was thinking through just the idea of ritual, whether that's intentional or not. Like, I think some dads, and I've been through seasons where the ritual was I come from work and there's like, yeah, we're greeting, but it's like, I need a beer. Right. Mm-hmm. And like, I think dads go through this. Like, it's been a long day. They're stressed. There's whatever. And like, I need to decompress. And for whatever reason, I'm home and I still need to do that. And I need to, and then you walk into chaos, and then probably it's a night full of frustration and more chaos and emotions and tempers and whatever else. But I've found myself like, what are the rituals that I'm already, what are the rituals that exist, and which ones should I try to replace? And so like, that's an example. But how can I replace that with the couch time or an example like you guys have talked with, or how do I create a ritual with my kids? And we're in a season where, like, little kids, it's pretty easy to do that. Mm-hmm. A couple of days in a row, and they get so excited about, I want to read we're in Advent right now, so we're doing like the Advent calendar, and like that's quickly become a ritual that they're excited about. Or a Saturday morning, let's go ride our bikes to the taco shop. And now my kids, that's all they want to talk about is how many more days till we can go to the taco shop with dad to get a taco or whatever it is. So like, how can I create small little rituals that turn into quality time or experiences that my kids can look forward to and they can expect? And I want them to remember those types of rituals versus the seasons where dad is so stressed out that it feels like I'm second to a beer or whatever else. I mean, that's
or a phone,
stupid, or his phone or whatever else. Yep.
Yeah. And I think it's important. Like, I think there are moments we come home from work that we do need to decompress. We do need to like process, hey, those emotions that I am currently carrying with me from work, I do need time to release them, to give them up, whatever you want to call that. I would encourage fathers to do it before they're in the presence of their children. So what that looks like for me is, when I pull into my driveway, before I open the front door to my house, I have to be dad or husband. And so whether that means I spend 5-10 minutes in the car, or whether that means my walk to the front door is slower. And my wife knows this. Like, it's like, if she sees me sitting in the car, she knows, hey, he's just taking some time to get ready for coming in. Well,
and for me, there may be a one-off day where I come in and I have to do a phone call, or there's something urgent, or I'm not in a good state and I have to go, whatever. For me, the problem comes when, like, day 2, I can't do the same thing again. Mm-hmm. Like, it can't turn into
a habit
or a ritual.
Yeah.
That's really easy for me to, that becomes path of least resistance for myself. Yeah. And I have to be very, very careful and guarded against those things.
Yeah. And I don't think our kids need to see us be perfect or on 100% of the time. No. I think there's other opportunities that leads to flourishing when there is a moment with a child where I recognize I was fully distracted because I couldn't stop thinking about something that happened today. Yep. It creates an opportunity for me to go back to that child and talk about, hey, you remember when it seemed like I just wasn't there? And hey, I'm sorry. That's on me, but here's what was going on. Because I think our kids need to understand, like, sometimes there's things going on in mommy and daddy that, because they'll communicate it, daddy doesn't want to spend time with me. Right. Daddy doesn't care. But I think our kids need to
Daddy's
see
mad at me.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they need to see like life is rough and there's things that are going on. And I think my wife does a really good job of unpacking these things with our children that's preparing them for adulthood.
Yep. It's good.
Yeah, I think any rituals to decompress are great.
Yeah.
I've wrestled a lot with trying to prioritize like exercise with little kids, and sometimes biting off more than I can chew as Kyle and I sign up for this crazy race together and all that. But at the same time, one of the things I've just known for me personally that works really well is having like that in the afternoon between when I work and when I go home. And so if I can squeeze in an hour between work and home of running or exercising, that helps me decompress so much, to where for me, just the way my brain works, it's really hard to go from like just meetings and writing content and getting creative to like walking in the door. And sometimes I'll drive home in silence if I don't have time to exercise. I'll just try to like those little things for me help. I know that if I don't do those, I'll definitely bring it all home, and I'll be just spinning my wheels in my brain while I'm trying to be with my family, and it doesn't work out well.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good, guys.
Yeah. Any takeaways? What's your one takeaway from today's podcast?
Dang.
This is how we wrap it up. You got to think of one thing that you took away from this podcast.
Come back to me. I'm thinking there's a lot of great stuff here.
I think I'm taking away the stuff you said about teenagers. Like, I know it's like a decade ahead of where I'm at right now, but just recognizing that it's going to be just showing up consistently over time on their time schedule, and not going into the season expecting them to love me as a dad the same way that they love me now. Yeah. Because that's not the point. It feels great. I love it. Fills up my cup, but one day that's not their job. Their job is not to fill up my cup, and so I'm taking away some of those pieces and nuggets, and
it's good.
Yeah,
I think for me it was actually one thing you said early on, and we didn't really unpack it. I think it might be an opportunity for a future podcast. You were talking about the intentional fatherhood, and you said two things that stuck out to me. It's like, am I emotionally available? And then you also said, am I pursuing the heart of my child? And so it's like, when you said that, it made me stop and think, okay, what does it look like for me to pursue the heart of my child? And I want to spend some time unpacking that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Did we give you enough time to figure this out, Kyle?
Well, I'll throw something out there. I think the takeaway for me is like, I want to look into, investigate, be curious around like, what are the things Justin and I are doing to help our children feel secure at home? Like the displays of affection or the couch time or whatever. Like, I think even in those, like, I walk in and just, we're busy. Jess is busy. We're doing whatever. And so like, how are we modeling the prioritization of, because I do feel like we prioritize that. It's like, how are we modeling that specifically to our kids? Do that. What are they seeing of that? And can we be more intentional with that? It's good.
I like it.
Awesome.
Jeremy, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. And like I've told you off microphone too, like what you guys are doing. And I just feel like fatherlessness is such a thing, and helping men step into a space of being intentional fathers I feel like it's one of the most important things we can do with our lives. And so love what you guys are doing. I pull away a lot from it every time I listen. So Thank you very much.
Well, we're trying to figure this out.
Yeah. Cool. Bye.
Dads, thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Upshot. Wherever you are, Kyle and I hope you got something out of it. Know that you're not alone in this journey called fatherhood. And we want to encourage you to hit that like button, subscribe button, or whatever button is in front of you with the technology you're using. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time on The Upshot.
If you ever need help, just Josh or I could jump in and help do that kind of thing.
Or Kyle and I are here to help.
I'll let you or Josh know.
Yeah, thanks.